when I submitted the package, I got a letter back from the Bureau acknowledging my submission, which I had never received when I had put in for it while I was on Valdez. In the meantime, I had made Chief Petty Officer, which was, quite frankly, the highlight of my career. Making Chief was just phenomenal. And then I wondered how come I never got a letter acknowledging the last one. Well, in the meantime, the USS Valdez had been decommissioned. And when they were pulling the equipment off the ship, including a file cabinet out of the ship's office, they found my folder down behind the file cabinet.
Oh, my God.
It had never been submitted.
Well, there's your answer.
There was my answer to that.
It's so Navy, isn't it?
Isn't it, though? Yeah, it's like, geez, what a surprise. What a surprise. And it's like, oh, who's responsible? Nobody's responsible for that. It's just Navy.
Yeah, Schmedlap's long gone. There's no one.
Yep. Seaman Timmy's no longer there.
That's right.
So I waited, and then a chief, an MSC that I knew from Quincy, who was a court officer in the outside, called me up one day, and he said to me, well, I guess I have to salute you now. I said, what are you talking about? And he said, so you haven't seen the message traffic? And I said, well, I don't get message traffic at my house, so no, I haven't seen it. Well,
yeah, thanks.
And he said, you're Thomas Joseph O'Malley? I said, I am. And he said, your last four is 5569? I said, yes, you know that already. He said, well, I think you need to go to Quincy and look for the message traffic on the LDO announcement. So I immediately jumped in the car in South Boston, drove recklessly to the Quincy Reserve Center, went charging into the office, showed my ID card, said I need to see the message traffic, and they said, we've been expecting you. and there it was, that I had been selected. I was the only one selected Navy-wide that year.
Nice.
I was absolutely thrilled. Absolutely. Here I was finally going to be an officer of the line. And I had been thinking about that since 1963. And here it was. I got commissioned in 1993. So it was a long time coming. And I had people say to me, oh, now you're going to get yourself promoted out of a job and all that stuff. I didn't care. I had finally realized a childhood dream.
Right.
And I don't think there's a lot of people in their lives that get that.
No.
There are some, but I got mine. I really did.
You did.
And my assignments after that were pretty interesting. I became the first lieutenant on the Clark. Even though I was in a reserve status, I was still the first lieutenant because they didn't have an active duty one. So I had all kinds of stuff I had to do all month long and then go to the ship, and the classified stuff got done, obviously, on the ship, which I was thrilled. And I learned to drive ships and had a blast driving that FFG. It was like driving the Corvette of the fleet. The CO said, drive it like you stole it. And we did.
Those steam turbines could haul.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. She was quick and she was nimble. When I left there, I got assigned to coastal. I got assigned to the precursor of the IBUs. What did they call them? The Coop Mine Units.
Right.
And mine was Coop Mine Unit 2101 out of Boston.
Okay.
They had the old YPs at the Coast Guard base. And it was like, really, what is this? And of course, they're going to do the mine clearance routes and all that sort of stuff. And I thought to myself, is Boston really on the list to get mined? Are we going to do this? You go and you do what you had to do. My wife at the time was not happy because my 2 weeks active duty, I came home every night.
Oh, yeah.
That was usually her vacation time. And then she had to cook for the crew. I was a first-class petty officer at the time and, still at that point waiting to get my commission. When I left Clark, I went to MIUWU 202 up in New Hampshire. Coastal Warfare Unit. All of a sudden, you're not in dungarees anymore or khakis. You're in camouflage uniform.
Did it feel like you had come home?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Felt like I had gone back to the Marines.
I gotcha.
And then I was told, we have a boat. Nobody ever uses it, but we have a boat. And where is it? And they had a little Zodiac in the warehouse. It's like, well, let's use it. So we got the Zodiac going and got the little, I don't know, they had a 20 horsepower outboard on it or something. And got it so that it wasn't leaking anymore. We patched all the holes in it and we got it underway, and they hadn't used it before. And we got it going. The unit eventually moved from Portsmouth, New Hampshire, down to Newport into a pretty old beat-up building, as you well know.
I am familiar with it, yes.
Yeah. And at that point, the IBUs had the Coop mine units had morphed into the inshore boat units. And the inshore boat units, as you know, in the very beginning were everybody's stepson. Mm-hmm. And they were using stuff out of DRMO, the Defense Reutilization and Maintenance Office or something.
I think that's right, yeah.
Yeah. Used boats from the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard didn't want them anymore. So these poor guys were going out and spending their own money on spare parts and everything else. And it was a time when the reserves were looked down upon by the active duty folks because we were the poor, we were the poor relations. We weren't worth anything. We were just sucking up money that the active duty guys could use, and they had no use for us. But as things progressed, when I made Lieutenant Junior grade, I got the opportunity to go become the executive officer of an inshore boat unit out of New Haven. Became Inshore Boat Unit 22 with Lieutenant Commander Will Stubbs was the CO of the unit, and I had known him from back in my days with the Mobile Inshore Undersea Warfare Unit. I had the opportunity to choose IBU 21, which was in Newport, which would have been a shorter commute, and Lieutenant Commander Gordon Brose, who you know well, was the CO there, and he wanted me as well. And what made my decision for me was that I didn't know enough about Navy admin, and I needed to learn admin. And Lieutenant Commander Stubbs knew more about admin than the people that wrote the book. So I decided to go there. Plus, he had a 2-year billet, whereas Lieutenant Commander Brose only had a 1-year billet for me. When I got there, then I felt like I was home. Had small boats again. Had a lot of guys interested in doing their stuff. And there were things that went on at that unit that kind of needed to be changed, because I don't know how it was at IBU 21 at that point, but I know when I got to 22, there was a certain clique of people, certain guys drove the boats, other people did not. To my way of thinking, there were way too many chiefs and not enough Indians, kind of stuff. So I helped. Well, I kind of drove some changes to the units that was not good with some people. Some others, it was great. But I wanted to change the attitude because there was too much of, let's go fishing. Let's take the boat out and go fishing. It was kind of a weekend adult summer camp for weekends, get away from the wife, get away from the husband. Let's go just drive the boat around and have a good time, with not a real lot of focus on combat readiness. Having been through the experience of Vietnam, knowing what the potential was that could happen, these guys needed a change in attitude and a change in focus. And it wasn't their fault. It was just sort of the way the reserves had been working at the time. So I took it upon myself to kind of change that. And we did that, and we worked on it very, very hard. As it turned out, it was very smart thing to do, because there wasn't much beyond that. And as they had done some training with some port security operations and things like that, and high value escort stuff, training that nobody knew anything about. And then, of course, the coal got blown up in October 12th, 2000. And that probably changed all of our lives, yours included, to a great degree for a very long time. I recall very distinctly, I was working at American Airlines at the time, and my now former wife called me and said, "Are you near a television?" And I said, "No." She said, "Get to a television. One of your ships has been blown up." And I went in and I got to a TV and I saw the TV coverage of the call. Of course, it was later than it had actually happened because that's how those things work. And I thought to myself, well, this is gonna leave a mark. And then, of course, as you know, there were coastal warfare asked for volunteers to go and cover some of that stuff. And about the following June, they ran out of volunteers. And at that point, Eric Zane was the CO of the unit at IBU 22. And I can remember asking him about, do you think we're going to get called to active duty? And he said, no. He said, I talked to the Commodore. They're going to be fine with volunteers. And this was the drill weekend in May of 2001. Mm-hmm. And Sunday afternoon, we're finishing up all the admin stuff you're trying to do to get the reserve unit out of there. And the phone rang, and the yeoman told the CO that the Commodore's on the line for you. And Eric and I had desks that faced each other in a shared office. And I heard one end of the conversation, obviously, and it was, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No, sir. Aye, aye, sir. And he hung the phone up, and I looked at him and I said, what's that all about? And his comment was, how do you think you're looking brown? I'm like, what? And he said, yeah. He said, we've been recalled to active duty. I said, when? He said, next month. And I said, well, we need to get the crew in here right now. Tell them, because we have a ton of administrative stuff to do. Employer notifications, family note, all of this administrative stuff that, thank God, Will Stubbs had trained me with that had to be done. And then before we brought the crew in, Eric said to me, yeah, but this is only going to be 90 days. And I said, really? I said, tell them 6 months. He said, why? It's only 90 days. And I said, because if it's 91 days, you're a jerk. Right. If you tell them it's 6 months and it's 5 months, you're a hero. And he said, okay. So we did that. And at that point, the reality set in that I'm going back to the combat zone. I hadn't been in a combat zone in a long time. But the last time I was there, I was only worried about myself. Now I'm worried about everybody else. Mm-hmm. And that is a very sobering realization. Even though I was only the XO, it's still a very sobering realization. We deployed. We did well. We worked our butts off. And the big realization for big Navy, the active duty Navy, was, holy smoke, we couldn't do this with the reserve guys because we don't have any capability to do it. We have no capacity for this.
They completely advocated that role. Yep.
Absolutely advocated that role. And here we reservists, them reservist guys, they're 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. And you know what? We saved you bacon.
Yep.
We saved you bacon. And you went through the experience as well as I did with active duty ship COs going, you guys are reservists? Are you kidding me? You're the best thing we've ever seen. Which was great for us, So we deployed the first week of June in 2001. And in August, we were living in Dubai. We were living on the economy in a housing complex built in the 1970s called the World Trade Center. And we would be in civilian clothes until we got down to the Port of Jebel Ali, as you know. And then we'd change in uniform, we'd go and do the things we did. And it was, don't, push the fact that Americans kind of hide that. Don't wear anything with logos on it. Meanwhile, all the Arabs are running around with the, LA Lakers and New York Knicks jerseys on and stuff, I didn't see any Red Sox jerseys, though, on those guys, which,
it says something right there.
It does, doesn't it?
Yes. We corrected that years later, though. But
we did. We fixed that. We fixed that good. So we were the morning of September 11th. I had a mission. We went out, myself and the master chief of the unit. We went out. We met one of the ships coming in, and we went in, did our normal escort stuff, and finished up. It had been an early morning one, and I was back in my apartment at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, putting together something to eat for supper, and I had the TV on, turned to probably